Just getting warmed up, fish face. Better stick around.
If you've been looking to power up your Ally, this might just be it. So what better way to boost those power levels than with the XGMobile eGPU? And the one I have specifically is the 6850M XT. So, as always, I'll give you the good, the bad, and then tell you who I think this is for. And as a quick disclaimer, nothing here is sponsored, nor was it provided by ASUS. Though if you're wondering about this S-tier mod case, this was provided by HandheldDIY for review, and I must say it is absolute quality. The plastic feels premium with no rough spots, and the fitment is basically perfect. They also sell these flat buttons, which weren't a perfect fit for me, but they can be a bit fickle. So with some quick adjustments, I think they'll work great. And honestly, I think it's actually more about how they were designed by ASUS, if anything. So make sure to check out the links in the description for handheld DIY accessories like these to bring up your Ally game. Now back to the 6850, I'm dropping the M and XT even if that makes AMD mad, because that's too many letters for my puny brain. Know what else is confusing? How many of these there actually are. As a brief intro, there is the 3070M, which I believe was only sold in bundles or select regions. Then there's the 3080M, a 16GB variant. And then there's the 6850M XT. Yeah, I said I was dropping the letters. And then there's the Big Daddy 4090 XGMobile, which is almost as powerful as a 4090, I think. I mean, the price is the same as a 4090. All of these XGMobile units use the same proprietary port and work only with these ASUS devices, the X16 Flow, Z13 Flow, X16 Flow, and the ROG Ally. There are a couple of different versions of those laptops and tablets, as well as this Ally, which comes in either the Z1 or Z1 Extreme variants, or Z1 Extreme if you're a Canuck. I also expect that in the future, these XGMobile eGPUs will be forward compatible with say a 5080M or 5090M, assuming they go with NVIDIA. This is kind of a large assumption though. Now with that out of the way, let's get to what I like. I like the form factor, design, and overall build quality. It's by no means compact, but if you're in a pinch, you can definitely throw this in your backpack. Try that with a desktop GPU. And there's the obvious fact that you can boost the performance of any one of those devices I mentioned earlier, namely the Ally, by plugging in the single cable and not needing any additional cables, as this will supply enough juice to power any of the devices. Obviously, if you have a newer Flow laptop, like the one with the 4070 let's say, your options for the XGMobile units are pretty much limited to that 4090. So that's where I'll talk now about performance. For the purpose of this video, I benched only the Ally and the X16 Flow with and without the 6850, and only with Cyberpunk, because nobody cares about any other games. Or that's what somebody told me anyway. The in-game benchmark was run 3 times each for each listed device, with the latest 24.3.1 Adrenaline drivers. Each run was done at 1080p high with FSR 2.1 quality setting, unless otherwise stated. Also, for reference, the X16 Flow has a Ryzen 9 6900HS with Radeon 680M iGPU and an RTX 3060 mobile variant dedicated GPU. You can see here that the performance is interesting. The X16 consistently outperformed the Ally, albeit slightly, even on the silent mode, which suggests to me that, at least in this game, the Ally CPU is the bottleneck. And you can also surmise that, based on the Ally only numbers, where the CPU was capped at different TDPs, limiting its maximum clocks. Another interesting point here is also that the Ally, with the 6850, matched average FPS and even 1% lows with the X16 and 3060. So while plugging in the XGMobile to my laptop did yield some performance gains, it was relatively small when compared to the gains had by the Ally plugged into the XG. You might also note that at the top and bottom of the chart that the Ally, whether on 4GB or 6GB of VRAM, was outperforming the X16 Flow when the dedicated 3060 was disabled. And this makes sense as the X16 has a 680M iGPU, though the numbers are pretty close. And then at the very bottom of the chart, I tested the Ally and 6850 plugged into an external monitor at a custom 22 watts and was able to get relatively stable 58 to 60 FPS on 4K or 2160p, low with FSR Ultra performance. It's not the way I would play personally when plugged into a TV or monitor, but it's pretty impressive that it's actually possible. Another point I'd like to make here about performance is that one of the issues I ran into was some inconsistencies in numbers when jumping between 4 to 7 GB of VRAM on the Ally when plugged into the 6850, which forced me to run the benchmarks more than 3 times for some cases, and then upwards of 7 times. I'm not exactly sure what was causing the issue, but if for whatever reason you get strange numbers when using the XGMobile, you might have to restart to fix that. Also, because I don't have a high refresh rate external monitor to capture with this setup, I wasn't able to fully test the difference in performance between running the XG out to another display versus letting it run on the built-in Ally or X16 display. Just know that it's expected you'll get at least some kind of performance bump in the numbers compared to this chart if you're plugging into another display, since the data won't have to be fed back and forth between the display after rendering on the GPU. And now that performance is out of the way, it's time for me to dish, and boy, I've got a big dish. Firstly, I did mention that I like the overall build quality, but it could be better. It's mostly encased in plastic, even though there are numerous ports, and the port selection could be better, like why don't we have a USB-C out? Also, it can only be really oriented standing up, as laying it down isn't really an option with the Ally. This means that if you don't like the fan blowing a certain direction, your options are limited. Sounds like nitpicking, you say? Well, I am, so let me keep going down the rabbit hole. I'll also say that you can't remove the proprietary cable, so if you do damage it, the whole thing is probably broken. That and the crux of the entire product, which is the XGMobile plug itself. And while it delivers pretty good performance, you are entirely locked into the ASUS ecosystem. That means you don't have any other options when upgrading except to sell this XG for another one. And they ain't cheap. At the same time, this isn't exactly the perfect plug-and-play solution either. While plugging it in and then flicking the switch, then tapping OK, generally works, sometimes it requires a full reboot of the system, either when you're plugging it in or unplugging it, so that's not exactly convenient. And you heard me mention fans earlier. I'm not complaining about the noise, though it does get loud. My complaint here is about the fact that, even as an ROG product, it's a bit disappointing that there are only red LEDs. What is this, 2010? We FPS enthusiasts deserve more RGB. You deserve more RGB. Alright, let's talk about who I think this is for. Ultimately, I think it's for people wanting the most of the ROG Ally and intend to use it docked, connected to a TV/monitor, and or people looking for a desktop replacement with their Ally at the heart of that setup. And the reason why I say I think it's only these people...
I don't believe you people.
Huh? What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
It's largely because of the cost and prohibitive nature of the XGMobile port for upgrade options. If you consider that other eGPUs, like the 1X Player 1X GPU or GPD G1 eGPUs, both use USB 4 and Oculink, this means that those owners can switch to another manufacturer's eGPU at a later date if they so choose. With the Ally, because this is the only real way to make use of an eGPU, you aren't free to do the same. In other words, say you have a Legion Go or a Claw. Haha, just kidding, nobody should have a Claw. Then you can plug it into a 1X GPU and be on your way. Even if you get some performance loss, you're not locked into that eGPU or ecosystem. With this XGMobile, yeah, you're stuck. But not right now, so go and check out this review next.
GG.